Hello from Germany. Hola in Mexico. Hello in the US. And happy Earth Day to everybody out there. Very happy to be here today with my dear friend Thomas. And yeah, Tommy, Earth Day it is.
That's a great day, and thanks for reaching out, Rob, to having this show and to talk about this so important topic. And as you know, I'm coming a little bit more from the consulting side and the management consulting side, and also looking a little bit more for profits and for profitable growth. And sometimes you can think, or the audience can think, okay, how can we combine profitable growth and the financial focus with all these sustainability trends and focus and aims and visions we do have? So is this at the end of the day possible, Rob, that we can join and can we merge these two different worlds, the finance world and the sustainability world?
Well, that's the question. It reminds us today that exactly 51 years ago, there was huge student protests in the streets, based on which then Earth Day was created and celebrated every year. And I would say that the overall situation for us has not been improved since. Quite the opposite. If we look at social systems, if we look at our environmental situation, I think we've lost ground. Already in a couple years later, in 1972, scientists had published the book The Limits to Growth. Already back then, there was an understanding that the natural resources will not suffice to continue the growth, the economic growth we had until then. Little did we learn from that. No, the narrative always contained profitability in terms of money, and growth per se, economies, businesses, etc. That became more or less a self-fulfilling prophecy. There's nothing wrong with making a profit. You know that. People, planet, profits, our mantra. But I think it's time to redefine profit. And that's why we came up with the title for this show of Profit Redefined, to question what does really make business success going forward. Is it money only? How do we assess that? How do we value business? What kind of role does business play? What's the purpose of business?
Yeah, I agree, and it has to be circular at the end of the day. And we're talking a lot, and there are a lot of talks and visions about the circular economy. But at the end of the day, my day to day is being with company owners. I mean, they do have financial pressures, and sometimes you do not want to be in the shoes of a company owner, having a huge responsibility for sometimes 50 or 100 or thousands of employees. So, I mean, at the end of the day, it's a big challenge. I mean, the theory and books is always a great stuff and it's inspirational. But at the end of the day, we have to take decisions, and the decisions we have to make, or the C-level has to make these decisions. And I have seen that, and I agree with you, it can work. I mean, we have a lot of clients, and it's about planet, but it's also about people. So how can we really generate and create value, not only for shareholders and the company, but also for the people and for the planet? So in my experience, Rob, I mean, my day-to-day is also strategic planning. And so you have to put these topics, I mean, on the strategic planning workshops. When you do discuss these topics, and when the company owners and CEOs are open to listen, of course, to the employees, to listen also to our planet, I guess then you can really start to have a broader vision of how we can design and later on also implement the circular business model. Because when we do not have profits and there's no cash flow, we cannot invest in HR initiatives. We cannot invest in social responsibility initiatives or planet initiatives. So I guess it has to do with strategic planning and have a team who is believing it and discussing it and taking action, Rob.
No, absolutely. And let me ask you this. Like your strategic planning, what time horizons do you go for? Is it your 1 year planning, your 3 year planning, your 5 year planning, your 10 year planning, or do you project out a 50 to 100 years out? Because I tell you what, I believe and I see strong evidence working with my clients to build purpose driven brands here in Europe and all around the world, in the US and in Asia, that it is awakening. It is changing. And you know what? The difference, the key difference is it's a difference of our relationship to money. It's our relationship to feeling happy. There's so much happiness research these days, which all tell us the same. The number one happiness driver is relationships, and you hinted to that, it's people. Then health, health goes hand in hand with the planet health, and the health of the people goes hand in hand. There's strong correlations to this. And number three is covering our basic needs and a higher purpose of belonging to something bigger than yourself. Everything we know from happiness research or millionaire research and lottery winner research, that this maximization story is a lie, is a huge lie, probably the biggest lie ever told. Still, we're running in these narratives, and what comes with it is fear. So there are already some great, courageous leaders who go for it today, who go for it and who act out in the people and planet dimension. And guess what? There's strong research for the past 20 years that these companies, in general, most of them, are even more successfully financially, from a finance point. What it takes is to break free from our programming, from the narrative of profit only. It is to look at profit in a wider dimension. Who is profiting? You could say profit always has a strong money connotation, but if you use it as a verb, to profit, who profits from what? Does your health profit? Do your relationships profit? Does your our basis for the next generations profit? Who profits?
I do agree. I mean, it has to be a mindset. It has to be a mindset, a C-level mindset, and maybe we have to have these discussions and explain it a little bit better how this circular model really works. But at the end of the day, I mean, we should integrate this in strategic plan. We talk about the vision, we talk about a mission, we talk about values, we talk about principles, and then we have to put in these new sustainability concepts, and not only to have it in a vision and for your mindset or for an inspirational talk or presentation. You have to allocate budgets. Okay, as you know, you have to allocate budgets to really implement these initiatives when it comes to a principle, when it comes to some sustainability goals, when it comes to social impact. I mean, there is a return on investment or a social return on investment. So we really have to merge these two worlds. And merging these two worlds, for me, when you talk about relationships, Rob, it's about talking about it and discussing it and agreeing on it, and not only agreeing on it to put it in your strategic plan and in your business plan, so that we really can transform the companies. Because if you have only this sustainability mindset, but you cannot get your company profitable, and you do not have a concept or a method, a methodology, how can you be and how can you grow profitable? Then neither nor is working out.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's great evidence that the revolution is changing. It is happening around the world. We've got great movements like conscious capitalism, the purpose economy, movements like Singularity University to leverage exponential technologies to solve humanity's grand challenges. We have B Corp with over 4,000 companies around the world now. And those are these courageous business leaders who take their hearts into their hands, who know that they have to also earn money, because money is an energy, and yes, you need these energies to invest in the company and to invest in the planet, invest in the people, but they go for it. They really act out. It's not just only make believe. It's not just they're walking the talk. They're real, and it's from a deep conviction, from a deep heartfelt truth from within, that they go out. And there's great examples. Take JP Rocks in India, take Keystone Bakery in New York, take Ecosia here in Germany, and take all of our three guests which we have on the show here today, these courageous women, great female global leaders, which we are honored to have here today on Earth Day. And that goes also, I want to mention that briefly, I think that we need a more female style, a more feminine leadership. That's not limited to women. Also, we as men have our feminine elements, of course. We need to bring those out. We need to have the courage to lead in a more feminine style. Because if you hear the narrative, Mother Nature, Mother Earth, Mama Gaia, Pachamama, that there is this feminine, the female element, giving birth, giving existence for all of us in our world, and I think that's multifaceted. That's looking at the overall picture. Whereas our past economy, that's why I'm saying economy must be a subset of ecology. Our past narrative was too extractive. And that's the past. That's the 20th century. It was shareholder primacy is extractive, it's single-minded, it's short-term, it's creates toxicity. The future, the 21st century is, like you said, circular, it's regenerative, it's inclusive, it's multifaceted, and etc. And yeah.
But at the end of the day, there is a big challenge, not only for the large companies, Rob, as you know. I mean, the backbone of any economy are the small and medium-sized enterprises. So, I mean, this trend and these new business models should not only be adapted by the big and the large enterprises, but also, of course, by the small and medium-sized segment. So, I guess this is a big challenge. So, let us know, Rob, who we invited today and why we invited Anna, Julia, and Elizabeth.
Yeah, like I already said, there are three great women, great, beautiful women, and strong female leaders who are there, who step out, who show up, and who show up and who also walk the talk. They're real. They're the real deal. They're great. They're great light towers to look up to and to inspire other companies. And with that being said, and without further ado, as time progresses, I would like to ask to the stage our first guest, who is Julia Hitzbleck. She's German. She works for Bayer. She's the social innovation design head here at Bayer AG and the chief innovation officer at High10X. And without further ado, Julia, stage is yours.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. Nice to see you. And thank you so much, Rob and Tommy, for organizing this great session here today to discuss Profit Redefined and what is actually needed. And you touched so many great points already in the introduction. Yeah, I think you talked a lot about leadership styles and so, and I think if you look at the UN sustainability goals, I see and meet a lot of people who are quite skeptical and say, yeah, they're out there, but we only have now 9 more years to go, and how can we actually meet them? And I would say from a technology perspective, I would say stay optimistic. Yes, we can do it. We have so many information technology powered that develop at an exponential rate. It will really be possible to create a tremendous impact with using these and then also have positive change because a lot of these technologies, AI is now there and so many others, they are just right now at or very near the tipping point. And for example, if you think of solar power and the price performance development in the last 10 years, it's actually nowadays cheaper in half of the world to install and run a new solar farm than to continue to run your coal-fired power plants. And of course, yes, solar is not a completely new emerging technology itself, but the plummeting cost of renewable energy is really enabling a lot of additional green tech development that will help us to restore our Earth in the theme of today. But in addition to technologies from a business perspective, it's also the abundance of people and their innovative thinking that can help us restore our Earth and our planet's ecosystem. Today, we have about 60% of the world's population connected to the internet, and we have at least another 1 billion people coming online by 2025. Just imagine how much creative power they can put out there. As Rob said in the introduction, yes, I work for Bayer, a life science company with a beautiful vision to here. Bayer's vision is to health for all, hunger for none, which is really beautiful, aligning with the SDGs 2 and 3. And I spent a large part of my professional life there in the last years, working on innovation culture and entrepreneurial mindset, driving a lot of change there. And I think if you talk today about sustainability, it's just one more step in this whole chain, right? Whether you talk about innovation or digital transformation, and now sustainability is really key for many companies. It's not about just setting KPIs and an agenda and then acting on it. You need to take your people along. You need a clear strategic priority, but then also a mindset shift throughout the whole organization to really make it work. And today I would just like to share a couple of experiences. So I would say if you're part of an existing organization, it sometimes feels you're just one little piece of the running machinery. And if you want to grow something new, it can actually be quite tricky in these old machinery to grow something which is quite fragile in the beginning. In the last 4 years, we've built up an innovation network in Bayer of innovation coaches and people who really change mindset, but also introduce new skills, more entrepreneurial thinking, and really help to change the organization there. And yes, 1,000 people in a 100,000 people organization is just a small group, but they're all multipliers throughout the organization, and they could really shift gears in some respect. Some of the things that I learned, yes, if you have this bottom-up movement, that's super powerful because you also tap into the creativity of your people. But it only works if management top-down also decides on a framework and a system to actually make it work. And in an organization, you need the right incentives and a clear strategic vision for people to align and act on it. If you look at businesses themselves, right now with the SDGs, that provides a nice framework. So that's the framework picture. And now if we look into new business opportunities on the next slide, usually companies stick to the quite obvious ones like renewable energies to improve, or providing more products to emerging markets to also provide new opportunities there, empower women to have a contribution. But as if you see on the slide, there are also lots of small bubbles and elements. And it's when you're a running company and you also need to provide profit in the old-fashioned way to your shareholders, it's really difficult to judge which of these opportunities to pick and actually which will be really valuable in the future. And if you don't have a clear vision or maybe even a purpose statement, it makes it really difficult to judge. And there's a certain industry fixedness of the senior leaders to also open up a portfolio and then enable news. But if you have a large organization, you have the power of the people in your organization. And if you engage your people, they have also a strong connection, especially with sustainability, and whether this is opportunities for new businesses or just small little aspects. On the next slide, what I've learned is that if you really provide a clear vision and a purpose, your employees become engaged, they are happy to contribute, they go the extra mile, and that also creates not just a new culture, but also a stronger willingness to succeed and maybe even support things where you don't know and can't really measure the profit right away, but you're trusting that it will lead to something bigger. If you're a startup, on the other hand, some things are easier. You start from scratch. You sometimes feel you can reach for the stars. Everything becomes really, really easy. And while traditional organizations usually only talk about a vision and a mission statement, modern organizations also state their purpose and the reason why they exist. And that really describes and how they envision a better world, and that provides them with a very powerful North Star to reach an even higher level impact. And if you think about the biggest challenges of today, they're really also the best business opportunities, and creating something new to solve these challenges is great, but it's even better to also have a positive impact in the world. But as we all look into the stars, sometimes it can also be quite daunting, and many people just say, okay, well, but how do I get started? And I'm part of Purpose Alliance, which is a not-for-profit organization, and it's actually a community of doers who are determined to empower others to act and create their own future based on a very strong set of values. Just about a year ago, we started to run online challenges, initially, of course, around COVID-19 and the impact, but then also on the future of work and education and many more, whether it's global challenges or regional. They always focus on generating exponential solutions to global problems. And Rob mentioned Singularity University already in the beginning. It's also a community that emerged out of Singularity, very much looking at exponential technologies and exponential organizations. Now, with these challenges, they run online, anyone can participate, and the results are afterwards published for anyone then to jump in also at a later stage to either find inspiration or also find a community to collaborate and take them into reality. Now, how do we actually do this? There's also a methodology associated with it. It's called Purpose Launchpad, and on the next slide, we see the ecosystem of Purpose Alliance. It's the community, but it's also the mindset that is being spread for purpose-driven organizations. And this Launchpad methodology was initiated by Francisco Palau in collaboration with more than 150 collaborators from around the world. And I was really amazed with this open mindset because there were lots of elements, and a lot of people said, we learned so much around building new ventures, and whether it's customer development and lean methods and customer-focused design thinking, etc. But sometimes it's really challenging, where do you actually start? And Purpose Launchpad starts with a purpose. You define your massive transformative purpose of what you want to achieve, and look into what are communities and people that I need to actually make this work, and then only look for customers and start developing your product, thinking about a sustainable business model, of course, but also how you can tap into abundance, whether this is actually data nowadays or resources in terms of people or automation that makes things much leaner. It really helps. And as an open meta methodology, it's available for everyone, and it's really focused on further evolving early stage initiatives into purpose-driven organizations to make a massive impact. Why is this so important? Why is it such a mindset shift? Well, most of us were still educated to avoid failure. We're educated to pass exams and execute a plan that brings us to success. But one of the most critical things in the skills in the future is really creativity, and how do we actually explore the unknown. Being entrepreneurial is just one of the new topics that are being taught now in schools sometimes, if you're lucky, but it's of course always a topic in adult education. Now I'm part of one of the Purpose Launchpad certified mentors, and as part of the Evolva program, we also work with startups and companies, and on the next slide, it shows that we work with them to really build purpose-driven organization. It's not always just about the venture, but it usually starts with changing the mindset, especially if you work with an organization, to understand what is so different about just picking a business opportunity and trying to build the product and launch, but starting from a more purpose-driven mindset to then see who to actually work with and what is really the value of the product. And quite often, maybe if you think also in the long term about an ecosystem, the first product doesn't necessarily generate cash value. it generates a community that further contributes, and it generates value because people can learn and use a product, and then step by step build on it. And if we really think about abundance, and you touched upon this in the beginning already, it will be really difficult if abundance means also we can get a lot of things almost for free. How do you actually, and you have so many for free products, how do you actually make money? And is money, cash generated in the end, really the right profit that an organization needs to turn out? Or is it something even more, providing a better influence, creating a better world, providing better support to the organization? And I think this is really important to keep in mind and help others to make a massive impact. Now, on the final slide, I would encourage you all, so if we really want to restore our Earth, we need to do this together. From our community, we will be hosting a challenge on the future of health and well-being later this year. You're, of course, all welcome to join in, but it's also great to just connect with the community of like-minded people. And I'm sure there are many of such doers also in this audience today. So feel free to reach out to me if you like to learn more and be part of the community to create socially responsible businesses. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Julia. How, yeah, I'm blown away. It's really, really inspiring. Your experiences, your stories, which you shared, and the value you give to community. Let me touch on this last point before we then go to the next speaker. Maybe real quick, what value does community play and have for you personally in this great transition?
So I think it's the next step behind or after family, right? A community you pick and you also need to align with. It's not just necessarily the community where you live in, because especially a lot of people living in cities, they are not necessarily connected. They're just living by chance in the same block and use the same shops, but they are not connected by a common purpose or sense of being and something they want to do. Now, being in an always connected world these days, it's so much easier to find like-minded people and join communities where you feel connected to the purpose. So what do they want to achieve? What are their values? Do I align with it or not? Because to be honest, also with large companies, I think that is one of the challenges. Most employees today are so much more choosy on, like, not just where do I get the biggest paycheck, but does this company actually do something that I support? And do I feel our values align? And do I feel that I can contribute and together we can achieve something better? So I think it's really a key component to keep in mind. And it's also a great way to achieve a lot more with fewer resources, because if you connect with the right communities, you don't need to do everything alone, whether it's you as a solopreneur or you as a small startup. You have a lot of people with tons of creative ideas and skills that support, and if they align with your purpose, they support your mission as well. And
That's beautiful. That's a beautiful closing words, Julia. Thank you so much. The key is harness the power of community, of like-minded people. Thank you so much for your presentation. Tommy, over to you.
Thank you, Julia. Thanks a lot, Julia. Okay, let's invite Anna to our talk, to talking about a little bit more about the current climate crisis and the important role companies play there, and how do you address this matter as founder of Planetly and one of the for me, one of the most prominent experts in Germany when we talk about driving towards a climate neutral economy. So tell us a little bit more why you do what you do and what are you doing, Anna?
Yes, I'm happy to do so, and thanks for the invitation. So my name is Anna Alex, and I'm the founder of Planetly. And with Planetly, we are helping the economy to become carbon neutral. So what does that mean? So we are helping the businesses to first identify their carbon footprint and gain transparency about that in order to then pull the right levers to reduce the carbon footprint, and only then offset what cannot be reduced or what lies already in the past. And by this, to become carbon neutral. And I am doing this now for almost 2 years, and we are a startup from Berlin. We are now 50 people on the team, are working with 70 customers, among them quite some big companies as well, like HelloFresh and Home24. Just today, we announced our collaboration with The Economist that I'm personally very happy about, as I'm a huge Economist fangirl, kind of, and have been all these years. And the idea for Planetly came with when I tried to understand the footprint of my former company in 2018. So I was joining an initiative called Leaders for Climate Action, and try to find out what the footprint of my former company was. And quickly, actually had a consultant with an Excel sheet running around the company, asking us a lot of data. And in the end, this guy handed over a PDF and said, like, this is your carbon footprint. But all the results and everything in there was actually only backward looking, and it wasn't really actionable for me. So it wasn't really insightful. I didn't had any like benchmarks. I didn't really understood what should I do from here. And I started to wonder, the carbon footprint is the most important KPI of humanity of the century. So why don't we use the best technology that we do have in place in order to make it easy for businesses to understand the footprint and make the whole thing really actionable for the decision makers in the companies? And of course, the companies are the biggest part of the emissions, right? So they are responsible for over 70% of all like worldwide emissions. So this is where we should start, and this is exactly what we made our mission now, to make it easy for businesses and decision makers in the businesses to take the right decisions.
When you talk about the decision makers, I guess you need some soft skills to convince them. And tell me a little bit more about your challenge to convince top management to focus more on sustainability, and because at the end of the day, it's about people, and you have to discuss, you have to talk. I mean, sometimes maybe you have to argue and fight this fight, but tell me a little bit more how you engage, and it's a change management process, right?
Yes. Yeah, of course. It always has to do a little bit with change, because sustainability as always is as well a change of culture. So you need your team to support you, and it will get you nowhere if just someone like at the top level says like, we're now doing this, but no one is supporting us, or no one believes this person that you really want to change something. But I do feel at the same time there's currently huge momentum around carbon neutrality, and many businesses did understand that it makes sense for them to act now. And I do believe this is a really good message, that we do not just rely on the intrinsic motivation, and we as humanity not just rely on the CEOs of this world waking up tomorrow morning and suddenly want to save the planet, but there are really good rational reasons for them to move. So really good like extrinsic motivation and rational reasons. And as Julia mentioned as well, so one of the major rational reasons we see for our customers to become carbon neutral is strengthening the employer brand. So attracting the best talent out there. The best talent wants to work for a company that has a solid sustainability strategy. And they are demanding this. They are asking for this in the interviews. They asked in the interview, what is your carbon footprint and what is your sustainability strategy? So this is a really strong sign. And it is as well for the existing employees. 83% of all employees would stay longer in the company if the company is carbon neutral. Then the next good rational reason is the consumer brand, and this be B2C, but as well B2B. So of course the end consumer demanding more and more, but as well in the business world. For example, Microsoft announced that they will only work with carbon neutral suppliers in the future. So this is a strong statement. And then the third one is the attractiveness for investors, right? I mean, we touched on this already as well a little bit. Investors increasingly see sustainability and carbon neutrality of businesses as a proxy, as a sign for good business. So because they believe if the people who are there on top understood that this is an important issue, then they will as well manage to bring and lead the company through the storms of the next years and whatever is about to come there. And so I think there are really many good reasons to start this now. And this is why we see such a momentum in the business world.
On this point, Anna, to jump in here, the emergence of ESG, we know, it's going through the roof. It's exponential. It's the green ETFs, they're popping out like mushrooms. And, what you do has to do with measuring and managing. And what I observe also is that the ESG world is emerging, but there's no real global standardization just yet. What's your point on this, on the cross comparability, on the indexing of which, and the data quality and the trust which then the consumer or the future employee will get from that?
Yeah. So I not fully agree, only partially. So there are no true. So we're lacking the standards in terms of ESG as the whole ESG framework. That's correct. But there are standards to do the carbon accounting. Yeah. And they are international, right? So, and this are the standards that we're working along. And one of the most important standards there is a greenhouse gas protocol standard, which is basically the recipe and or kind of like the ingredient for all these different standards and all these different things that are put together there. That in that terms, there are the standards, and these standards in the carbon accounting are very, very important, because only through these standards we can make sure that basically every emission that is released into the air belongs to someone who feels responsible to reduce it in the end. So standards do play a big role in that, but we need more standards as well for the social and the governance part. I agree.
Yeah. Okay.
Where do you see this going, Anna, for small and medium-sized companies or maybe companies which do have 100, 300 employees and company owners thinking a little bit more what Rob and me talked about more traditionally, more finance focused. Where do you see this going for also the small and medium-sized companies, and what would be your tip and what would be your advice to them, where to start and how to implement this?
Yeah, so I mean, the issue with small and medium-sized companies is definitely that they don't have a huge CSR department with 10, 20 people working on that all day. And so they need to use technology from my perspective, because there is now it's of course Planetly, but as well, so we see a huge inflow of basically as well tech talent moving into this whole sustainability space and combining basically the two worlds of how to do good software, how to do good technology with the strong purpose of sustainability. So I think this is definitely one of the levers and enablers, and we do see that software as well as an enabler of as well companies without huge CSR departments, who could still then use this and still get active and still use this as well of one of the benefits, and not leave this stage just to the big ones who can afford that. So I would definitely say you're never too small to take climate action. So for us and for our main software, we always see like the the border of around 100 employees or around 100 million revenues. So from there on, it makes sense to really report standard conform, compliant with all the standards. If you're smaller than that, you can still take climate action, but you don't necessarily need to do it along these standards. For those companies, we do have a free 5-minute climate calculator on our website, for example, so that we can really enable everyone to take action, because these companies will probably grow as well. So, and the small companies of today might be the big ones of tomorrow. So you should have it in your DNA from the very beginning.
Anna, how do you see supply chains in this respect? You know, because businesses are, of course, integrated in a web of flourishing business up and downstream. And how do you evaluate the blockchain in this regard as a safety or confirmation measure?
Yeah, so I must say, I mean, so the first part to your question, supply chains are often holding 70 to 80% of all emissions. This is a so-called scope 3 emissions. So everything that is not directly released by your company, but is bought or is a service. So this might be the plane you take, but this is as well the materials you buy, the logistics provider you book for your business, and so on and so forth. So it is super important to gain transparency as well about the supply chain. This isn't necessarily something that you need to do from day one, but you should have a solid roadmap how to get there and how to get deeper and deeper and deeper into the supply chain. This is what we're working with a lot of our customers together on. Then when it comes to blockchain, in order to make sure that the data that you're collecting throughout the supply chain are then not changed anymore afterwards, I'm not 100% sure yet if we really need that, or if like normal technology, like normal software, is doing a big part of the job as well already. Yeah.
Okay.
Hey, Anna, thanks for coming on. Just let us know real quick, where can we learn more about you? Where can we find you?
You can find me on LinkedIn. I'm quite active there. Every Friday, I'm posting some planet positive news, because I do believe there are a lot of positive things happening in the world, and this is what we should share and like take action together. So find me on LinkedIn or visit planetly.com and yeah, reach out to us there.
Thanks a lot, Anna. Keep fighting the good fight.
Thank you.
Thank you, Anna. Great having you always. Thank you. Okay, and that brings us to our third guest today, which is who is Elizabeth Dreicer from dialing in from San Diego. And I can call her a good friend of mine. And she is another amazing woman and change maker in her being and working in this world with Consuli, a company focusing on data dignity. And without further ado, I hand over to you, Elizabeth. Stage is yours. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Rob, and thanks, Thomas, for having me. And I want to give a special thanks to Julie and Anna for their important work and actually just the inspiration that you're offering today. Yeah, just by way of background, as Rob mentioned, I'm coming to you from San Diego. I'm an entrepreneur, philanthropist, and activist. Was quite an activist a number of years ago and then reactivated, particularly in the last year as we're in this historic period of change potential. So many opportunities, so many needs, and as many may know, in America, we've been battling multiple pandemics, the pandemic, of course, of COVID, and the pandemic of racism, and all that entails. This said, I'm encouraged by the developments that we're facing at this moment in history. So just a couple more words. I'm a investor and co-founder in a portfolio of companies, software, data analytics, also working on important impact and policy changes here in America primarily, and then some stories that re-narrate our future. And we're re-narrating here. I mean, this is in part storytelling that we're engaged in.
What do you know about your digital dust? When you shop, click, listen, watch, chat, scroll on a roll, your data is being scraped and sold. To no surprise, businesses monetize, and you, what do you get? New laws say your data is not theirs but yours, that you decide how others use it, not abuse it. And experts say your data can generate 20K. Wow, right? But how? What now? If only we could get dealt into the data economy. That's on us, people like you and me, to form a vast collective, unionized, organized to get our fair share and take back what's ours in a world increasingly powered by data's command. Banding together, we ban the inequity. Whether you choose to activate privacy or share, whether you're in it for money, in it for fairness, or for research and medicine's benefits, linking your wearables and sharing your sentiments, mutual protection is to everyone's benefit. The race has begun. They're on the move to get you to approve giving up your rights before the movement gets big enough to fight. We have to take back what's ours while we still have the chance. The time is now to take a collective stance. We're a movement, working towards building a community today for a better tomorrow, creating what we all deserve, leveling disparity, activating fairness. We're Consuli, a public benefit company. Together, we're making data dignity history.
Yeah, so one of the companies that I'm involved in is called Consuli. We are we've created a company to address a really core issue, and what we have before us is, in so many ways, we know we're living in this world where the mindset has been one of scarcity around resources, and in fact, we've got many of the myths, and I think, Rob, you spoke to this earlier, the mythology of what's scarce and what's abundant, and actually we know that resources and human resources are really scarce, and actually money's quite abundant. We make it, right? That's an artifice that we've created. And at this moment in history, we have a new resource, and it's called data, that is currently locked in a dance, if you will. On the one hand, public policymakers are saying our data is ours, and therefore there are privacy rules and regulations that have emerged, especially California recently passed a consumer protection. I know Europe has done the same. They ultimately that will force the global world to operate in a certain way. That said, who owns and who can monetize this data? And we know that data is incredibly valuable. And so part of what we're looking at is making sure that the individuals, as opposed to the institutions, get dealt into the data economy in a way that actually could support, this is a new resource that could support things like universal basic income, a form of that. And the debate at the moment is sort of being waged in the privacy realm, and we're really interested in having this resource become personally useful to individuals. And there's a number of bodies of research that have looked at this and discerned that data is worth approximately $20,000 in US currency per year. So that's an annuity. That's meaningful for folks. And, and certainly the opportunity that is before us is to figure out how to enable folks to have and make use of their data. And so that's what Consuli is working to do. And when we think about what the challenges are at this moment in history as well, we've got a global world, right? And we've got sort of patchwork regulations around privacy. And then we really have, I would say, even more patchy relationships around ownership. And what is also needed here is growing a public awareness around not just the privacy aspects, but also the ownership and the sharing and the redistribution of what has become an extraordinarily wealthy sector. And so that is part of what we're working on. And I'm happy to field questions and chat about this.
Thank you so much, Elizabeth. This is great. It's so inspirational. And I learned about Consuli about 2 months ago or so, and it still feels fresh and feels, there's an emerging market, an emerging field, and a very important part to look at and to create and design, help design and shape. And talking about this is, picking your visionary brain as how can the data economy create a more just and a more sustainable world in a sense?
Yeah. I mean, one way is that, we don't just have it concentrated in a few companies, all the value, right? Our data is actually useful to the broader world, right? And so creating a mechanism for a more shared structure, I think is important. And that's what we're working on. And it's a combination of, know-how, willpower, way power, right? It's all of those pieces together that are going to forge more of a ecology around sharing. And, certainly, thinking about it, for me, and I'm sure for you all, so when we're filling out forms or agreeing to be on websites, what's happening is that everything about us is being harvested in one way or another. And, what hasn't yet been harvested will be harvested soon. It's all happening. And so then how to handle the digital rights and the licensing and the management of that in a way that enables organizations to get what they need. And let's use a real example here. We're in this moment of COVID, and there are, for example, one of the areas that we're focused on helping is get organizations connected to people. One use case is long COVID sufferers or survivors. They have an important amount of data for research that needs to be understood. And so, huge cohorts, and this is a global phenomenon. We've been hosting discussions on this topic, and have had many dozens of countries, from China, India, Singapore, the UK, Germany, Sweden. I mean, really every part of, including the United States, South America, dealing with these issues of both long COVID, what to do, what are the protocols, and the issues, there's incredible intelligence that we need. And yes, research is super important. And, you've got a lot of these sufferers who can't work, who are, struggling in the most fundamental way. And, their information is super valuable to the rest of us, right? So how do we deal them in a way that's equitable? And so, that's a bit of a long-winded answer, Rob, to your simple question, but there's a lot here.
Thank you so much. It's a rich answer, and it's an opening field, so it has to be a rich answer, and it's emerging. So we don't know all the answers yet. So we lean into the uncertainty and try to design it. I'm also in one of the Elizabeth, or in the intentional community called the Future Design Society, and we have these regular meetings every month, which is amazing because together we try to imagine or co-create or co-emerge the future. So it's amazing work in the community, which Elizabeth also does. Tommy.
Yeah, I'm really wondering, Elizabeth, when you have to implement this sustainability and also data-driven projects, tell us a little bit more. Is it more top-down or bottom-up to convince people to get also, I mean, the projects at the end of the day implemented and achieving the results they were looking for? How you see this?
Yeah, I mean, as a marketplace, right? Because in a way, we have to operate two sides, right? We're activating, individuals to become first aware. Most people have no idea that this is even an option, because up until really now, it's not been a personal store of value, right? Organizing this enables it to be a store of value. So it's educating the consumer, and then also communicating with the businesses, big, medium, and small, about the merits of dealing individuals in, and the, sort of the shift, the conscious shift from coercive, extractive, which you guys spoke about, to inclusive and shared. I mean, we're on, and in so many ways, it is really activating this idea of, there's enough for it to be shared. And in fact, folks who want access to information can get richer information if I'm willing to be licensing my data and be in communication, versus some, Pac-Manning of de-identified data that maybe is not as insightful. And so, there are benefits to be had on both sides of the aisle. And yes, it's the dance of getting both sides together in this moment of concurrence, yeah.
Great answer. So, yes, it's a marketplace. It's the two-sided marketplace, a platform which is coming up here. Amazing business, Consuli. I would recommend to everybody on this show here to check it out. It's consuli.net. Go check it out. It's amazing. I'm a huge fan, big Consuli fan. Thank you, Elizabeth, for being with us today. Happy Earth Day. And knowing that we are a little bit over time, again, everybody out there on this show, on this broadcast, thank you so much for joining, for dialing in. Happy Earth Day to all of you. Do good things in the world. Tommy.
Happy Earth Day to you as well. Thank you so much.